Okay. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Okay. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vigna Vinasha Narasimhaiti Namine Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayatim Girim Yat Kripatamaham Vande Sri Guru Dinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Sri Chaitanya Mishwaram Om Tat Sat. So join me with this prayer. Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Jai Sri Sri Nitai Sundar Gaura Hari, Sri Sri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Mai, and Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So Hare Krishna everyone. Welcome back again. So we are continuing with week 4, and just a little bit of recap for what we discussed previously. So we were talking about how Krishna brought the chariot to the center of the battlefield at Kurukshetra, and then Arjuna, after seeing Dronacharya, Bhishma, and all the other Kauravas, he had a change of heart. He was put into illusion, Arjuna Vishada, right? And then he gave several reasons to not wanting to fight. Initially he was saying about compassion, how he didn't want to kill. Why does he have to kill people, right? So this is something which is not, he did not consider this as compassion. So in this way, he gave other reasons. And then we talked about how Krishna refuted Arjuna's reason of compassion by speaking about the soul. So he was telling Arjuna, the real compassion should be for the soul, not for the body. The compassion should be for the body also, not to say that there shouldn't be compassion for the body, but the priority is for the soul. So why is there a priority? Because in the execution of one's duty or religious duties or dharma, it should not material compassion for the body should not come in the way, especially when he is a Kshatriya. Arjuna is a Kshatriya who is supposed to defend Dharma. So that was basically understanding, and we talked about how we are the soul, the qualities of the soul, and all of that we discussed. So while we were discussing this, I was supposed to tell you a story last week, which we didn't have enough time. So I'm just going to mention the story now. This is in regards to last week's discussion about the soul. So this is a story about the king, Maharaj. He's a very great, actually he was the ruler of the world. This was during earlier ages, during Satya Yuga. And this king, his name is called Surasena. And he had actually the entire world as his kingdom. And he had unparalleled wealth and opulence. So he had everything basically. But in those days, it is very important for a king to have a continuation. That means he should have a qualified heir, someone to take over the kingdom, because he has that responsibility to ensure that his kingdom is passed to the next person who is responsible and who is trained. So the system was he should have a child for this, a prince. So he did not have any children, unfortunately. He had, and because he was not able to have a child, he was, for stately reasons, he had to marry several times. So he had many queens actually. And in fact, from one queen, it became 10 queens. Unfortunately, due to a twist of fate, none of those queens were also able to bear a child. And then, like that, he tried to marry more. And in the end, he had hundreds and thousands of queens. It's described that way in the scriptures, and from all over the world. But not even one of them could bear a child with Chitraketu. So, and therefore, one could say Chitraketu had everything, thousands of wives and extreme opulence. So whatever which is considered to be in the current material standard to be to be the epitome of success, Chitraketu had. But he even had youth and everything, but he did not have a son. So he was very upset about this. He was very sad. Despite all this opulence, he found that he could not feel any pleasure from these of opulences that he had. Wherever he went, it was always a thought nagging his mind, and it stole away his pleasure. So eventually, everything he started to see lost its luster. He couldn't derive any kind of happiness, and he became very morose along the years. Even the beautiful faces and the attractive eyes of the queens could not pacify Maharaj Chitraketu. So one day, Maharaj Chitraketu had a guest. Those days, they will have very special guests. These are VVIP people. So, the sages used to just visit the different kingdoms, and they will come and then they will give their darshan. They will give their advice and all that. So it so happened that there was one very powerful sage called Angira. This is called Angira Rishi. So he was passing by the kingdom, and immediately Maharaj Chitraketu, as per the rules of the guest, he immediately personally went and welcomed Angira Maharaj. And then he invited him, gave him a seat, gave him water, gave him sweet words. So these are all the necessary things to be offered to a guest, right? And after all this, then Angira Rishi asked, they had a conversation. And basically, this story is narrated in the Srimad-Bhagavatam. So there's a lot of philosophical conversation that went on, which I'm skipping. So Maharaj, Angira Rishi would ask Maharaj Chitraketu, how's your kingdom? What are is all the aspects of your kingdom? We can learn a lot about statecraft in that conversation. I was asking, is all the limbs of your kingdom working well? So after all this conversation, he said, but Chitraketu Maharaj, I'm seeing that you are very disturbed and distraught. So please tell me, what is the problem? So Maharaj Chitraketu said, of course, you are Angira Rishi, you know everything, but just to give me an opportunity to please you by my speech, you are asking this. So Maharaj Chitraketu then said, I have everything, it is true. My kingdom is everything perfect. There is nothing which is lacking. But I lack an heir, a prince, to take after my line, to ensure the continuation of this kingdom. So then Angira Maharaj, he listened, and he could see that Chitraketu Maharaj, he was extremely disturbed in his mind. He was like, almost like almost like a semi-mad person. He was like talking, I need a son. It's like as if he could not find any kind of pleasure in anything. So Angira Maharaj could understand that it's not going to be easy to pacify this Maharaj Chitraketu. So he said, okay, never mind. So I will give you a blessing. So Angira Muni said, I will give you a blessing. I will I will give you a, what do you call, I will do some yagya. I will do a fire sacrifice and offer sweet rice to the fire deity. And then from there, after that, you can distribute the prasadam to all your to all your queens. So if you want to, and then from there you can have a son. I bless you to get a son. And then after that he said, and this son you will get will be a source of great joy and also a source of great sorrow. And with that, suddenly he just disappeared without explaining his words. So then when Maharaj Chitraketu heard this, he was he was so happy. He just heard the word that I will get a son, that he was just so happy about it. And he thought, okay, maybe great suffering, okay, maybe my son will be disobedient, maybe my son will not be doing what I want him to do, maybe he'll create some heartbreak for me. So that way he thought, okay, we'll try to see what we can do about it. But the important thing is I got a son. So that was Maharaj Chitraketu's idea. So anyway, he got this sweet rice prasadam after the yagya. And what he did, he gave it to the first wife. He had thousands of wives, right? Remember? Some places it says hundreds of thousands. So anyway, he gave this sweet rice to his foremost wife. Her name was Kritadyuti. So, and then he gave this, she also took this sweet rice, right? And then they ate. And soon enough, within a few weeks, the queen was pregnant. And within 9 months, she delivered. And there was a very beautiful boy who was born, baby boy. So Chitraketu Maharaj was so happy. In fact, not only Chitraketu Maharaj, the entire kingdom was happy. They were all jumping and laughing, and they had a festival such that nowhere else they could see this festival. A huge festival which encompassed the entire kingdom all over. And Chitraketu Maharaj gave so much of charity and everything, and he was completely jubilated. The queens were all also very happy. All the hundreds and all the thousands of queens, including the chief queen, Kritadyuti, all were very happy. And like that, they spent the next few months all doting upon the child. So time went by, and what happened was this Maharaj Chitraketu became so absorbed in the child that he only wanted to spend time with the child. Of course, he did his kingly duties, but at the same time, because he wanted to spend time with his child, and this child was with Kritadyuti, the chief queen, he sort of neglected all the other wives. So, slowly it was like more like always talking to this wife, this one wife, this queen. So in that way, slowly all the other queens felt they lost the favor of King Chitraketu. And in weeks after months led to several years, 1 or 2, 3 years. And then what happened, because of this neglect, the queens, they felt that they couldn't have a child. And it's because they couldn't have a child that Chitraketu Maharaj now only focuses his attention to Kritadyuti, the chief queen, and to his son. And we are all being neglected. So therefore, the queens slowly developed bitterness in their hearts. And like that, you can imagine if just one person is bitter, it's not too bad. But if there are hundreds and thousands of people who are all bitter together with you and bitter on that one single point, so the bitterness in our heart becomes magnified when we share it. Just like how happiness is magnified when we share it, bitterness also becomes magnified when we share it sometimes, when the focus is the same. So eventually the queens they started to develop hatred in their heart. They started to hate the chief queen, Kritadyuti, and more than the queen, they hated the child, the son, the child which was born. So in front of Maharaja Chitraketu, they will be very happy and everything, but at their back they will be plotting. What can I all? They were always grumbling and cursing about this child. If only this child was gone. And then slowly they will say, if only the child was dead. And then after saying that several times, the thought came to their mind, why don't we kill the child? So in this way, one day, all these other queens, they gave poison to this child. And what happened when the child, when the next day, the maid, the queen's maid wanted to go and wake up the child, she saw that the child was blue, no, not breathing, and he is like not moving at all. And when the maid saw this, out of extreme, because everybody else loved the child, just like as if it was their own child. And they all completely, when the maid saw this, she just collapsed completely. And then the queen was thinking, where is my son? Where is the maid? She should have brought my son to me by now. And then after that, she went to the she was started walking towards the room, and the maid also eventually she came to her consciousness. And again, when she saw the child, she started shouting and crying loudly. And then when the queen heard this, she ran towards the room. And when they saw what happened, that the child was lying motionless, the queen also fell into a faint completely. So like that, the maid tried to revive the queen, and then she spread the alarm, and everybody came. King Chitraketu came, but before that, the queen got her consciousness. And then when she was crying, and then when King Chitraketu came, he saw the entire horrible scene, and he also fell into unconsciousness. The grief was so great, he just fell into unconsciousness. So it's described in the Bhagavatam that this went on. They will regain consciousness, and then they will see the scene, and they will again fall into unconsciousness. And again, they'll regain consciousness, and like that, they will take turns. It's like the grief was so terrible for them. They couldn't bear it, and they were lamenting. And finally, the queen was hitting her hands on her chest like that, and crying out to the gods, "Fie on all of you! How can this have happened? What did we do? Why, how can this have happened? We tried everything." And the king also lamented like this. He cried and lamented and started speaking all kinds of wrong things, right? So, but in the end, after seeing all this scene, what happened was Angira Muni came again. And this time he came with his dear friend, Narada Muni. So Angira Muni and Narada Muni, both of them came together. And when they came, they were somehow able to penetrate into the terrible lamentation which was going on. And the king Chitraketu received them, and then he said, please see what has happened. And then Narada Muni said, well, what has happened has happened. Now Angira Muni told King Chitraketu, I told you that he will be a great source of happiness and also a great source of misery. And then Narada Muni started to tell Chitraketu, you must learn to tolerate. This is part and parcel of life. You know, what comes sometimes goes. But King Chitraketu was not able to be pacified. So then Narada Muni, he told King Chitraketu, see, now I will call back the soul. I will call back this departed soul back into the child's body. So by his mystic power, he was able to do it. And this child suddenly got up. The dead child suddenly got up and started breathing. And then all the queens and all the king were extremely surprised. And they were like, oh my God, my child, my child, my child. They came to the child. And then this child, in a very matured voice, spoke. Who are you calling your child? And then in that way, he started to speak. Narada Muni asked him, who are you, O child of Chitraketu? And then the child said, I am not the child of Chitraketu. I have had many fathers and many mothers throughout my many existences in this material world. Which father and which mother are you referring to? So when Chitraketu heard this, from coming out from that child who died and then again came back to life, and when all the queens heard this, it just penetrated like a sharp needle into their grief, and they were able to awaken. And from then onwards, a very interesting conversation took place, right? This conversation took place between the soul and Narada Muni, and both of them were talking to King Chitraketu. So some of the things the soul was saying: in this material world, which is like a swiftly flowing river, all the people become friends, relatives, and enemies in due course of time. They also act neutrally and in many other relationships, right? But none of this is permanent. So he is describing my relationship with you, who you are calling yourself as my father, is just temporary. So in this river of time, right, all of us are like small particles. You are a particle, I am a particle, everybody is a particle. And just like how in the river, you can see a picture here, sometimes clumps of grass, clumps of dried leaves, they are floating in the river. Sometimes they clump together, and then they travel together to some point, and then the clump loosens, and then it distributes itself again. They all separate again and they move their own way, and then again they'll form a different clump somewhere else along the river, and then again they will disperse, and again another clump, so like that. So he's saying, just like how these leaves clump together, so in the same way, in our different lives, we all come together as a family. We go through some time, and then when we die, we separate. And again, in our next birth, we again clump together like that. So in a different family, it forms. So our relationships are all temporary. They are only while this body is existing. And we are not the body, we are the soul. And as a soul, our eternal father is the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna. So, like that, this child, or rather the soul, by the mercy of Narada Muni, was able to speak all this very high philosophy to Chitraketu and all his wives. And after hearing all this, Chitraketu had a what we call an epiphany. He was able to get realization about all these things, and based on that, he was able to cut down his lamentation. He was able to understand the nature of this world, and he was able to accept what has happened. So this is the story about the lamentation of King Chitraketu. Actually, the story continues. Chitraketu, after that, goes to he actually practices spiritual practices, and then his next life, Chitraketu's next life, he wasn't he was very he achieved his success, but still he had some things to settle in this material world. So that will be discussed in another time in Bhagavatam. So it's nothing to do with this story here. So it goes on. Anyway, Srimad-Bhagavatam has many nice stories which give all these kind of examples. So this is the moral of the lamentation of King Chitraketu, which appears in the Srimad-Bhagavatam. It's basically reinforcing the fact that we are the soul and we are eternal, and the body is not. And therefore, whatever relationship we have with this body, including our relationships with family, friends, and everybody else, it's also temporary. And not to say that, yeah, we understand that it's temporary. So we should now try to cultivate a relationship with our eternal Father, the Supreme Lord, Sri Krishna. So that was the idea. So the living entity in the material world carries its different conceptions of life from one body to another, as air carries aroma. Just like when the air passes through garbage, we will smell the garbage, right? But when the air passes through a rose garden, we will also be able to smell the rose garden. So in the same way, the soul, Atma, we are carried by karma to one after another, different bodies. So it's an interesting verse here from the Srimad-Bhagavatam. Under the supervision of the Supreme Lord, and according to the result of one's karma, One's soul is made to enter into the womb of a mother through the particle of semen to assume a particular type of body. So this is Srimad-Bhagavatam saying. And what is the cause of this? What makes us get a particular type of body? What makes us get a particular type of life, right? So this depends on two things. One thing is our karma is mentioned over here, right? According to one's karma, due to the supervision of the Lord, he allows this to happen. So karma is there because whether or not we deserve or we don't deserve. So we will talk about this shortly. Okay. The other factor which determines our next life is our desire. So what is the desire that we have? According to one's desire, one will achieve. So that's why it's important we have to purify that desire. So and accordingly, we will, if we deserve it, we will achieve that. So now we are talking about karma. So I brought this point up of karma. So I'm just digressing a little from the main topics of the Bhagavad Gita. So I want to go deeper into what is karma all about. So we have heard this many times, especially Hindu families and all that. We understand now in English also this concept of karma is common, right? So you can see here the karma. It's actually basically you push something, it's eventually going to come back to you. What goes around comes around. That is basically the call for karma. So it's not difficult to understand. It is actually there in the material world, even for things which, even in science. For example, Isaac Newton, right? In his third law, he says every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So we understand this, right? It's not something very difficult. We see if we do something, that's always going to be a result. Now, the quality of the result is what we are interested in. Whether is the quality is a good, something which is good, or something which is bad. Now, which is it? So therefore, just like Maharaja Chitraketu and the queens were lamenting when the child died, right? Sometimes people, we also like to say this: why do bad things happen to good people? Right? They will say, I've done so wonderful things. Why is this happening to me? Why am I going through this kind of situations? So we see in the world, isn't it? Nearly of the world's population, half of the world's population, every year, about 1 billion of them are born in poverty. So the world is full of disparities like this. Some are born into poverty, some are born into rich families, some are born beautiful and healthy, some are born diseased, deformed, sickly throughout their lives. Some are living in happy families with all their necessities taken care of in modern countries, whereas some are living in war-torn areas where the family is forcefully killed or separated, and they go through so much of misery. So why are these things happening? So a lot of people will have this question. So some people will think, why is God doing this? Is God partial? Why is he choosing some people to become very good and some people to become very bad? In fact, sometimes we see, why do we expect only bad people to suffer, but sometimes we will see good people suffering and the bad people are all getting away with things. So what's happening here? And even the Christians, they have this quote, for whatever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. That means if you throw what kind of seed you throw, if you throw a corn seed, you will get a corn plant. If you throw a lalang seed, you'll get a lalang plant. So like that. In Quran also, the same concept is there. It's called kifara, right? And what kifara says is the same from Christian point of view. It is God's punishment. So they will say people are going through misery or whatever, it is his punishment to, or if it's not a punishment, they will say it is also his test. He wants to test us to see how we are dealing with situations. So, therefore, but there is a question that may satisfy some people, but people may say, why do children suffer? What about children? Why are children having to go through this? So we see many children born deformed, born in war-torn countries and being killed, born with AIDS even and dying. So if the kifara concept is true, that God is testing us or God is punishing us, then why are children going through this, right? Surely children are innocent, isn't it? Everybody says that. Surely they are innocent. Why are they going through this? So then people will ask this question, why is God so cruel? Why is this happening? What kind of God would allow this to happen? So it has led people to think either God can do nothing to stop catastrophes. Sometimes COVID comes, people will say, why is God allowing this to happen, right? Now Mumbai is having, on top of COVID, it's having the cyclone, right? Hurricane, I mean. Which means, so does that mean God is not that powerful? That he is doing nothing to stop catastrophes? That means he's not powerful, is it? Or does it mean that he doesn't care? He doesn't care about it. Which would mean that God is not all merciful. People are crying for him. People are asking him. So does that mean that? Or either that he doesn't exist because he's not stopping it, or he doesn't care, or therefore maybe he doesn't exist. So which is it? So is there another perspective? Is there something else that we are missing? So this is where the law of karma will answer. This is where this question of why children are suffering, the other religious beliefs in this world cannot answer that. They will not be able to answer this point. If you ask them this question, they will not be able to give you a satisfactory answer. They will just say it's God's test. So that's it. That's all. So it may be sufficient for some people, but it may not be sufficient for everybody. So people have questioned, why me? Why this? Why God? And because of this kind of questions, it has led to more and more people in this world becoming atheist. So nowadays, there are more atheists in this world than there ever was. And they have become structured, institutionalized, and it's going on. So like that, so this is Atheist Day, March 23. They even have a day, right? So the definition of atheism, lack of belief in the existence of God or gods. So it's interesting that it's defined as a lack of belief, not a complete non-belief. This is from a dictionary. Atheism is defined as a lack of belief, not complete disbelief. So it's very interesting because people actually fundamentally deeply want to believe. They want to believe. So, but it's just that they sometimes cannot accept the philosophy which is being passed on. They cannot make sense of it. So it's just a matter of ignorance. So these are the innocent type lah. The not so innocent type one, they don't want to believe because they think if they believe, then they cannot do what they want to do. So therefore they think that way. So the world religion that we have, most of them cannot answer this question. But Hinduism and Buddhism basically because it comes from Hinduism, both of these alone amongst all these religions is able to answer this perfectly, completely, without any difference. So Krishna also says, right, Samoham sarva bhuteshu, I am equal to all. So how to understand this when we see some people born well, some people born poor, and all things like that? So where does Krishna's equality come here? So this can be understood very well if we can understand this analogy. So I'm showing you a picture of a courtroom. You can see, right? We have what we will find in a courtroom. We will find a lawyer, we will find a judge, we will find the convict, most importantly, isn't it? So what happens in a courtroom? The convict is caught by the policeman and is brought to the court. And what happens in the court? The court is judging him, whether the man is guilty or innocent. So if the man is found in the same courtroom, if the man is found innocent, then he is given compensation. He was given lots of money. You know, if you win a court case, you get a lot of money, right? The opposite party has to pay you, you know, lawsuits of worth millions of dollars and things like that. If they falsely accuse you and they put you in prison and then you sue the court, wow, you can get a lot of money. So we are seeing this happening now. But the same courtroom, it's also condemning criminals to either the hangman's noose or to prison, right? So now, so the question would be, is the judge partial? So this is the same concept we can understand on what's happening in this world. So we have to understand that the convict, the problem here, it's not the judge's fault. It's not the judge who created the problem. It's not the judge who is condemning mercilessly, isn't it? Now, is it considered mercy? If a convict has murdered someone, should the judge be merciful and say, oh, let him be, power, you know, never mind, we give him another chance? So it might look like mercy to one person, but to the family where the person got killed, right? Where is justice, isn't it? So therefore, the law of karma we have, this law of karma is the universal justice system. So Krishna says in 3:16, my dear Arjuna, one who does not follow in human life the cycle of sacrifice thus established in the Vedas certainly leads a life full of sin. So now we have to understand, just like how the criminal in the judge's courtroom, because he committed, he went against the law, so he was incarcerated and he was punished. Whereas the other person who was exonerated, I mean, he did good things, they are compensated very well. So therefore, we need to understand, right, what is right and what is wrong. What are the right things to do? What is the law? We understand human law, so we need to understand God's law. Okay, so because we have a universal justice system, which is a perfect system. So living only for the satisfaction of the senses, such a person lives in vain. So this is 3:16. It says, if one doesn't follow the human life, the cycle of sacrifice, thus established in the Vedas. So that's the purpose of the Vedic scriptures, particularly the Dharma Shastras, right? They will tell you what is right and what is wrong. In every duty, in in every person's duty, in every person's situation, it will tell us what is the right thing. So basically moral codes. So, and what is acceptable behavior, what is not acceptable behavior. So then Krishna says, therefore, one should know properly what action is, what forbidden action is, and what inaction is. Now, inaction, we will talk about it later, not today. But at least one should know what right action is and what forbidden action is, so that we don't fall foul of God's law, right? So let's see. In human form of life, we have got developed intelligence. Why is this human life important? Why should we take a bother? Why should we know what is right and what is wrong? Because can animals understand what is right and what is wrong? Can animals or plants or any other living entity Can they understand right and wrong moral codes? They cannot, isn't it? So it is only human beings who can. So in human form of life, we have got developed intelligence. So why is this developed intelligence for? Is it for us to enjoy food better, to eat better, to sleep better, to mate better, right? So, or is it for some other higher purpose? So this is something which is worth thinking about. So we have got this developed intelligence to discriminate between right and wrong and lead responsible lives. So we have already mentioned this, right? For whoever a man soweth, for whatsoever man sows, that he shall reap. So here, there's a nice picture here. It shows how if a man were to kill a cow, you can see the head has been transferred. So this is the law of karma. Basically, right? What you do to another person, you will also get in return. So this is a nice statement from the Mahabharata. As the young calf is able to recognize its mother from among 1,000 cows, right? Like for us, one cow looks pretty much the same as another cow, isn't it? And they say all sheep looks alike for us. Whereas the calf of the cow, even amongst thousands of cows, it will able to recognize its own mother very quickly. This is a Vedic point, right? And it's found in the Mahabharata. So in the same way, so does karma find the person destined to experience it in the proper time. So it will not go away. It will stay with us. And Vedic karma, the concept of karma is it's not limited by time. It is not limited like how the Christians say only amongst human beings. It is for all living entities, right? So there is action for every action. There is a reaction. You cannot say that the fire does not burn the child because the child was too young and too blurred to understand that fire can hurt it. So if the child were to put his finger inside the fire, will the fire come and say, okay, I will forgive you because you don't know? So ignorance is not a plea. Even in the court, one cannot say to the court judge, right, I didn't know I shouldn't do this. What's done is done. It's the responsibility of the human beings to understand what is right and what is wrong. So if we don't spend our time or our lives to understand what is right and wrong, and when we commit something, we cannot escape from the consequences. So as you sow, so shall you reap. Now, this is a point where when we do an action, this action is like a seed, right? So now we're trying to understand how karma works. When we do something, it's like a seed. Now we have different types of seeds, isn't it? Some seeds, if we throw on the ground, within one day it will sprout. You will get a small sprout. Or within 1-2 days, some will take few days, some will take 1 week, some will take few weeks, some may take even months for the seed to sprout. Correct? Same thing with action. Some action will give you immediate result. For example, you go and slap the person sitting next to you. What will happen to you? Probably the person will slap you back. So that is immediate reaction. So that is like that. Some actions, like for example, an exam, if you put the effort to study for the exam now, it will probably take a year before we are able to experience the result of that, isn't it? So like that, some seeds, like a mango seed you throw, it will take months and it will take years before the seed grows. So we have different stages of this seed. It comes out like a sapling, then it will grow, and then it will flower, then finally it will fruit. The fruit will come, and that's when we will taste it, right? So this is how karma works, but not necessarily in one lifetime. So this is the interesting point here. Our karma, not everything we throw in the ground, it's going to come back to us within this life. So some will, one good turn deserves another and things like that, small things. But quite a number of them will not be experienced in this life. They take some time. So let's try to understand even more the intricacies of karma. So basically, there are three types of karma. One could say there are two types. Two types means one is called, okay, forget about the Kriya Mana here. These two, Pra Ravda Karma and Pra Ravda Karma. So Pra Ravda Karma means the karma which we have right now in this life. For example, we are born in a certain way, to a certain family, to a certain we look a certain way, right? So all this is already set. We cannot change our family, we cannot change our body, right? It's the way it is. So this is set, in what we call fructified already. So Pra Ravda Karma is what we are experiencing currently in this life. It's already set. And then there's something called Pra Ravda Karma. Pra Ravda. Pra Ravda basically means manifest. It's showing now. Whereas Pra Ravda means it is not yet manifest. It's in the baggage. It's waiting to come out. It's still in the seed form, or in the growing form, or in the fruit, or in the flowering form. It hasn't really become the fruit yet. So this is called Pra Ravda Karma. So to help us to understand this, we take this example of this archer. Now this archer, he is an archer. So the very fact that he is an archer means this is Pra Ravda Karma. That means in this life, he is an archer. And accordingly, he has a certain type of body. He has a bow. So he's able to, he has a certain skill set. He has certain tendencies. So he has certain mind frame, the way his mind works, the way his likes and dislikes are. So all this is already set within that life. So this is called Pra Ravda Karma. And then we have and this Pra Ravda Karma is like this bow. So the archer, he's not doing nothing. So what he's going to do, he's going to take up the bow. So he takes up the bow and therefore is going to perform an action. So because of the Pra Ravda Karma, he is born as an archer. He has carried the bow and he knows how to use it. And now what he's going to do, he's going to take the arrows and fit it in the bow. So these arrows are what we call Pra Ravda Karma. They are waiting to fructify. They haven't, because the archer hasn't shot anything yet. He's going to do something, but he hasn't done it yet. So now this Pra Ravda Karma is all waiting to manifest. Now, not all of them will manifest in this life. We carry actually karma from many lives. And it's like a huge baggage of karma, which is in our back. And we carry it, and every lifetime, some of it is executed, some are executed, some are like that, it goes on. So this is what's happening, right? So this is many. So therefore, this quiver that he's having here, this where he puts the arrows here. So this is where all the Pra Ravda Karma, all the actions, reactions from the past life is sitting inside. Now, this Pra Ravda Karma can also influence the current karma. How? It hasn't manifested yet. So therefore, it will appear in his mind. It will come as desires. It will come as tendencies. Now, why are we born with certain desires? Why is it I like Maggie, I like curry mee, another person likes soup mee, I like sweets, another person doesn't, he just can't stand the sight of sweets or whatever. Why do some people have a certain set of desires? So in the same way, some people are born in a certain way. Nowadays, especially, we have situations where there's a lot of crime. There is situations like gay, lesbian. There are people who necrophilia. They have a sexual relationship with dead bodies. They have zoophilia, sexual relationship with animals. So like that, and they have fetishes. Some people are crazy about shoes, and they actually have sexual fantasies and things like that. So why are they having things like this? It was not something which they cultivated. It's not something which they came with it. So this is called tendencies, bija. So coming from the previous lives due to the previous karma. So according to our karma, in this life, we get a certain set of tendencies. So these tendencies are called vasanams, vasana. Vasana means our inclination. I'm inclined to this. I'm inclined to that. That kind of inclinations. So this is like the bija, seed, the karma in the seed form. They are in the tendencies. They haven't manifested as desire yet. It's just tendency. I have a tendency to like sweets. Okay, that is bija. Then when we contemplate on this bija, when we start to contemplate on these tendencies, then we develop desire. It becomes strong. It becomes desire. So this is called kuta. It's now starting to manifest. It's like the seed has already sprouted. It has reared, it's sprouted already. So now we have no choice. Either we cut off that sprout or we wait for it to flower and fructify. So this is what happens. So this is all coming from the Pra Ravda Karma. So now I've mentioned Pra Ravda and Pra Ravda. So what is this Kriya Mana? So now this archer, he's taking this arrow, the desires and his tendencies, he is giving action to those desires. Now, for example, a person may say, I want to eat sweet. That's my tendency. And then I may say, I want to eat okay, sweet is not a good example. Okay, forget about that. Let's say I have a tendency to have something, right? So then okay, let's say I want the sweet. Okay, I want the cake. But how am I going to get the cake? So I can either do it on my own or I can steal one, right? So therefore, according to our current mindset, right, we will decide how we are going to give action to those desires. So that's what this archer is going to do. He's going to put those desires or arrows into the bow, which is his current body, the Pra Ravda Karma, and he's going to now perform the action. He's going to shoot that arrow. So that shooting of the arrow, when the arrow hits the bullseye or the arrow hits the target, let's say the arrow hits a deer or the arrow hits something else, right? So that becomes new action, Kriyamana Karma. That's called Kriyamana. Kriyamana Karma means new action. It's not there previously, right? But it's newly created now by our actions, tendencies. So once again, what is our prarabdha? It means sum of all accrued karmas since time immemorial. Because we have been in this material world for a very, very, very long time. And we have accumulated so many different tendencies, right? And what is prarabdha karma? Karma destined to play in our present lifetime. Like, we all are born, we have a certain set of astrology and things like that. So it's within that scope. So based on that scope, right? So that is karma destined to play in our present life. And Kriyamana karma is new karma produced in this lifetime based on the interplay between the prarabdha karma and the aprarabdha. That means between what we have got right now with our tendencies and our desires. So it's interesting that what the archer chooses to do with this arrow is his choice. So this is where free will comes in. It's not that, everything is set already. Our astrology will tell us what kind of nature we have, what kind of criteria we will be happy in, what we will be happy in, what we will not be happy in, what kind of occupation we may get, what kind of family we may get. And this is all prarabdha karma, right? Our astrology may indicate these things in our prarabdha karma. But and due to our prarabdha karma, we will have our desires. This person will have a desire like this. He will want to marry 3 wives, or he will want to have whatever, something like that. So that is all due to previous. So does that mean that, oh, it's not my fault? It is our fault because our previous actions earned us this kind of tendencies, earned us this kind of results. So that's how it came to be. And now it's forcing us to act. But to use the word force is not really correct, because we still have a choice. Now, this archer, he can either shoot the arrow to kill somebody, or he can save somebody. So the action is the same, killing, right? He is shooting the arrow to kill. So he can either kill someone or he can save someone. How can he save someone by killing? If somebody is a murderer and the murderer is attacking another person, so to save that innocent person, you can kill. So this is how the judge acts also, isn't it? So let's look at it in a different way. Now I'm explaining the same point from another perspective. So we have desire, right? Due to our Pra Ravda Karma, due to our previous lifestyle and everything, we have this desire. This desire is from we have many desires. So, and then we want to perform action. So what we perform, whether or not the action is good action or bad action. So if we perform good action, it's called punya karma. Karma means action. Punya means pious action. Like, for example, we do charity, we do good things, prescribed things. That's punya karma. If we do bad things like stealing or hurting people, that's called papa karma, sinful action. So both this punya or papa will give reaction, and it will give two types of reaction. It will give aprarabdha reaction. That means it's not going to immediately show the reaction. I do this, but it may take several months or several years or several lifetimes for that reaction to come back to us, right? So therefore, it is some types of action is stored in the unmanifest karma. Whereas some types of action, it's going to immediately manifest, right? So we discussed this already previously. So, and due to that, we will either enjoy or suffer according to our punya or papa karma. And at the same time, remember I said some action is unmanifest. So what happens to this unmanifest action? They will also go to our storage, because they're not going to manifest in this life. Some may not manifest in this life. So they will go into our storage, and they will act on us in the form of desire and tendency. Why we have certain desires. Why do sinful desires come in our heart? Sometimes people know, people know it's wrong. People know it shouldn't be done, but they cannot stop themselves. Why? Because these things are very strong in them due to their unmanifest Pra Ravda Karma, which will force them, which will make them it will force them to go in a certain direction. So it doesn't mean that it cannot be changed. It just means that the person needs to put more effort to make the change. So that's the difference. So this tendency or proclivity will feed back into our desires. So it's like a loop. It feeds back into our desires. So bad actions or whatever actions. So it's either punya or papa. Either way, good actions, pious actions, or sinful actions will eventually feed back out to our desire, and they will lead to our enjoyment or suffering. So this is the cycle of karma, which goes beyond different lifetimes, and it's been there for time immemorial. And what is it due to? Why are we doing all these things? It is simply due to ignorance, because we don't know it. We don't know that this is the result, that this is the loop, that this is how the system works. Because knowing the cause is 50% the victory of the battle. If we know why this is happening, then we will try to do something about it, to stop it. So the next question is, can we stop it? Now, can we stop it? That question will only come in a human being. So that's why human life is very important, not like animal life. So this is where we can make the difference. So Bhagavad Gita 4:16 says, even the intelligent are bewildered in determining what is action and what is inaction. So my point here is ultimately to show that this karma is actually very complex. It's not so easy to understand. So we can try to understand little, but nobody can say we are going through this because of something that we know. We could be many things. It could be many things we could have done, and it is a lot of interconnectivity is there. But one thing we know for sure, that this karma is God's law, and it's perfect, and it is universal justice. Why is it universal justice? It's perfect justice because no one can escape from it. No one can get away with it. One can get away from legal law, from man's law, by cheating, by covering evidence, by whatever it is, by bribing or whatever it is. But remember, Paramatma is within each and every living entity's heart, and he is noticing and taking count of every single thing. So there is no way one can hide. Remember the story of Kanakadas? You know, the story once we spoke in the level 1 about how Kanakadas was told to eat a banana, and then the guru told him, you know, find a place where it is safe, for where nobody is watching you, and then eat this banana. All the other disciples of that guru came back and they said, yeah, I found a place where nobody was watching, and then I ate the banana. Whereas Kanakadas alone came and said, there is nowhere I could find where nobody was watching. Because everywhere the sun is there, the moon is watching, or the daytime is watching, or the nighttime is watching, or the air is watching, or the fire is watching. But ultimately, Paramatma is watching within my heart. So there is nowhere I can find nobody to witness. So even the 10 directions are called as witness. You know, in Yamaraja's court, there are many, many witnesses. One of them is the 10 directions: north, south, east, west, southeast, northeast, up, down, all this. So therefore, it's not easy to understand the intricacies of what happens and how it happens. That's why sometimes we find even great people can make mistakes. Like we know Bhishma Dev, right? Bhishma Dev was so careful and so perfect, but still he made the mistake of allowing Draupadi's disrobing situation to go on without saying a word. So because of that, he had to die. So like that, this is happening. So then what Krishna says, because even the intelligent are bewildered in determining what is action and what is inaction. Because there's so many complications, right? One story I can tell you in this regard is uh, not really I mean, just to cut the story short a bit. Once there was a sage, and the sage was sitting down and meditating, and then some burglars or murderers came and okay, not burglar, not murderer, it's just a thief came and took refuge in his house. The sage was there with his wife, the sage was meditating and all that, and then the thief came and said, please give me shelter, and then he stayed in his house. Now this sage didn't know that he was a thief, so he was there, and then one day the king's police they managed to come, and they found out where the thief is hiding, and they caught the thief, but before they caught the thief, they uh, they actually asked people. Okay, I'm not telling the story right. I forgot the story. Actually, I didn't prepare the story; it just came in my mind. But anyway, the point, I'll try to remember it again later on. But what the point was is, the person tried to tell the truth, to say that forgot the story. Okay, never mind. I won't do a bad job out of it. I will tell you the story next week. So it's just a story to tell how it is so difficult to understand what is right and what is wrong sometimes. So I'll remember that and I'll mention it next week. So anyway, so the bottom line is, in the end, if we engage in sinful activities rooted in the 4 pillars of adharma, what is adharma? Irreligion, right? So what are these basic sinful activities? There are many, many kinds of sinful activities, but they all have their root in these 4 things. One is meat eating, right? Why meat eating? Because it is destroying compassion. It's creating himsa, destruction or pain to other living entities. So basically, the point here is himsa, one who causes himsa. So it's not just meat eating, it's also other things. Like one can create himsa by one's words, one's action, but at least in a gross manner, one should avoid these things. Gambling, this is another root of adharma because it destroys truthfulness. And then we have intoxication, intoxicating, drinking and all that. So this is something which destroys austerity, tapasya. One loses the ability to control oneself. So therefore it leads to a lot of sinful activities. And the fourth one is illicit relationship. So when we have this, one destroys cleanliness, saucham of the mind, of the body, mind and words. So when people are engaging in these activities, you will find lots of sin going on in these places. So Aryans, or those who are interested in spiritual realization, they will avoid these four activities. So if we do these things, then we will suffer karmic reactions. So the karmic reactions will have a lot of different range. If we are very sinful, right, then there we will go to hell. So there are hellish places. In Garuda Purana, in Srimad-Bhagavatam, there's a lot of description about, it's not just one hell, there are many, many thousands of hells. And each hell, like one hell will be, a whole hell is like a pot of boiling oil. Another hell will be like it's very, very interesting, if you read, extremely imaginative, the way they describe the different hellish places and what kind of hellish torment awaits people. So these are for those who are extremely sinful. So there's a statement from the Srimad-Bhagavatam. If before one's next death, whatever bad karma one has performed in this life with mind, words, and body are not counteracted through proper prayaschita or atonement, according to the description of the Dharma Shastras, one will certainly enter hellish planets after death. As an expert physician diagnoses and treats a disease according to its gravity, it's recommended that one should undergo prayaschita according to the severity of one's karma. So if we have done something wrong, we should atone for it. So that is if we have the knowledge about it. So many people don't have the knowledge of what we have done wrong and whether or not what the type of atonement that we should do. So, so therefore, sometimes in astrology, they will say you should do this, you should do that, and things like that. So this is basically some atonement, but it's extremely complicated, and it's just a few of it. There are so much of karma involved. We cannot possibly atone for many, but it's important to have that mind, at least to have that kind of thinking, especially for major transgressions. We will find this a lot in scripture. We will find how when Indra sometimes does something wrong, he will do an atonement, right? So this kind of stories are there. So sometimes not everybody goes to hell. So sometimes they are not that sinful. So they degrade instead to lower life forms. So they may become an animal in their next birth, or they may become a plant or whatever. And if not in the lower birth, then they will suffer within a human birth. They will take birth as a human and they will suffer various types of miseries within that life. So Gita says, the living entity, thus taking another gross body, obtains a certain type of ear, eye, tongue, nose, and sense of touch, which are all grouped together about the mind. He thus enjoys a particular set of sense objects. So this is how a person gets the inclinations, right? So this is a verse given in the Gita. So on the other hand, if we engage in pious activities, so what are pious activities? So basically, these are the four pillars of Dharma. What are these four pillars of Dharma? Basically, anything to do with truthfulness. If we follow truthfulness vow, tapa, satyam, tapa, daya, saucham. So tapa means discipline. If we take austerities or discipline, we do some fasting or even studying and all that is a discipline. Controlling our tongue is a discipline. To become polite to people who are elders, it's also a discipline, because sometimes they can also elders sometimes can also test our patience. But if we maintain that discipline and follow that rule properly, that is also duty is another thing. Sometimes we all have duties, I know, husband, wife, daughter, children, whatever, and not all the time the duties are pleasant. But if we maintain that austerity and still execute those duties, then we get pious activities. Despite negative situations, if we still do them properly with good grace, then to that extent we will get pious credits. And what about daya, compassion? So mercy and compassion, definitely. Saucham, cleanliness. So these are all. So this is where good qualities of pious activities dwell. So you will find this is the you will find these common activities amongst the pious people. So Gita says 9:20, purified of sinful reactions, they take birth on the pious heavenly planet. So what's the result? If bad activities, if papa or sin brings us to hellish planets or lower life forms, pious activities gives us very good birth in this life or next life. It gives us good, it gives us good return in this life. It may give us very good return in our next life. Some people are born as prince or kings or whatever. Or what to speak of this world? They may even go to heavenly planets. So Gita says here, purified of sinful reactions based on pious activities, they take birth on the pious heavenly planet of Indra. So that means after their sinful activities have been cleared by suffering, so it's not that good activities cancel the sinful activities. It's not like that. What it does is it mitigates slightly, but still you have to go through some suffering. So once the suffering is finished, then we will enjoy the pious activities results. So after being purified of the sinful reactions, the souls will take birth on the pious heavenly planet of Indra, Indraloka, Swargaloka, where they enjoy godly delights. So, extreme sense gratification, whatever is like a. So one can even become Indra. So one can take up the positions of demigods, right? So this is one of what are some of the things that charity and all these things can give us. So this is what the understanding of karma is. So now coming back to the Gita, if you remember, Arjuna gave reasons to not fight. We've already spoken about the reason of compassion and the counter argument, right? Now Arjuna gave the reason of no enjoyment. He says, if I were to do this, if I were to fight, I will not be able to enjoy the results. What's the point? Even if I win or lose, I will be sad. So therefore, Krishna counteracts this answer by giving Arjuna this knowledge of karma, a karmic pious activity and sinful activity. So this is called karma kanda. Karma kanda means, you do good things, you get good results. You do bad things, you get bad results. So he says, O son of Kunti, either you will be killed on the battlefield and attain the heavenly planets, or you will conquer and enjoy the earthly kingdom. So this will be the result of your activity. So either way you're going to enjoy. So therefore get up and with determination and fight. So don't be interested in enjoying, be interested in doing your duty. So therefore get up with determination and fight. So what Krishna is saying here, if Arjuna were to fight, if he didn't fight, what will happen? So in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna goes on to say 233 to 236. He says, you are going to suffer if you don't fight. Everybody will think you're a coward. You won't know what else to do because you're a Kshatriya. How are you going to maintain yourself? You will live a life of misery, frustration, and you'll die that way. But if you fight, Krishna says, what better engagement is there for you? Because you are a Kshatriya and this is a religious war and you are in the side of Dharma. So to fight in a war to uphold Dharma is the best thing for you to do. So if you do, good. And what happens if you win? If you don't win, if you die in the battle, because you did your duty perfectly, you will go to the heavenly planets. It's pious activity, right? Because it's tapasya. So you go to heavenly planets and enjoy. And but if you win, then you will enjoy your earthly kingdom, Krishna is saying. So either way, there is win-win situation. There is no loss. So Krishna says, this shouldn't be a reason for you to say, I don't want to fight. No enjoyment. So he cancels that, he counters that argument by Arjuna. But this is, I'm going to end shortly. So then Krishna is not happy. Krishna is not interested to just give Arjuna piety and sin. He doesn't want to just talk about that. He wants to tell Arjuna something higher. So he says, after going to these heavenly planets and enjoying, what happens? When they have thus enjoyed vast heavenly sense pleasures, and the result of their pious activities are exhausted. So this means our pious activities is like bank balance. We have two bank account. One bank account is our negative, it's like merit and demerit. If we go to school, we have the merit system and demerit system. So if we do good things, we will get merit. If we do bad things, we will get demerit. So they don't cancel each other, right? But a lot of good merit will help us to, mitigate slightly the demerit. But still, you have to suffer the demerit, and you have to enjoy the merit. So both are there. So after exhausting, it's like, if you have a lot of merit, it's like spiritual, it's like pious credits. You want to go to heaven, you pay for that trip to heaven with your pious credits. So as you enjoy, your pious credits diminish finally until they become zero. Then again, what happens? Krishna says, we fall down from heaven. They return to this mortal planet again. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 9:21. So there's a statement from the Brahma Samhita which further corroborates this point. Everybody from the heavenly king Indra down to the insect Indragopa. Now it's a type of very small creature, Indragopa worm. From the heavenly king Indra, from such a high position all the way down to Indragopa, they are all bound by the laws of karma. So that's interesting, because even the heavenly kings are bound by karma, because they are also jiva, isn't it? But one who is wholeheartedly engaged in bhakti yoga to Govinda is an exception. He alone is not bound by karma. So this is just a hint. Krishna will begin. So in the end, either way, whether we are doing punya or papa, sin or piety, Bhagavad Gita 9:21 says, thus, those who seek sense enjoyment by adhering to the principles of the three Vedas achieve only repeated birth and death. In the end, they go to heaven, they come back. They go to hell, they come back. And then they go to heaven again. So like that, it's again and again repeated birth and death. So therefore, piety is good, but it's good only because it's not going to save us from this cycle of birth and death, but it's not the answer. So the answer should be how to break free of this bond of cycle of birth and death. How to break free from repeated birth and death? So very nice verses here from Bhagavad Gita 4:37, right? Athaidamsi samidho agnir bhashma sad kurute arjuna jnanagnihi sarva karmani bhashma sad kurute tatha. As a blazing fire turns firewood into ashes, O Arjuna, so does the fire of knowledge burn to ashes all karmic reactions. So why does the fire of knowledge burn? Because now we know the way how to escape. So what do we do with this knowledge? The knowledge is the key. How do we get this knowledge? We hear from Bhagavad Gita, or we hear from the Guru. He will be able to tell us. So in the Padma Purana, which is one of the scriptures, it says, the Pra Ravda Karma kuta bija and Pra Ravda Karma can all be destroyed through bhakti to Vishnu. So that's very interesting. That means this entire baggage of karma from the past, which hasn't manifested yet, which is called aprarabdha karma, and even the karma which is manifest already, the prarabdha already got, and including the seed, the sapling, the flower, the fruit, everything, all karma can be destroyed through the bhakti yoga process to Vishnu, right? So that's what Padma Purana says, right? Because the one Lakshmi is talking to Vishnu, so therefore. And then Krishna also says, Sarva Dharman Parityagya Mam Ekam Sharanam Raja Aham Tvam Sarva Papebhyo Mukshayishyami Ma Suchaha. Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. Why? Because Krishna says, I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions. Do not fear. So we can, by following Bhakti Yoga process, by learning to surrender to Krishna, we can break free. Not only we become saved from these karmic reactions, we are freed from this cycle of birth and death. So another few more verses, one or two more, this is the last one, right? Only a rare, this is from the Srimad-Bhagavatam, the topmost Purana. Only a rare person who has adopted complete unalloyed bhakti yoga to Sri Krishna can uproot the weeds of karma with no possibility that they will revive. Now, if you want a permanent situation to never again ever have karma again, ever, right? So here's the formula. By developing bhakti yoga, pure bhakti yoga to Sri Krishna. Such a person can do this. How we are going to do this? Is it very difficult? Such a person can do this simply by discharging bhakti. Just as the sun can immediately dissipate fog by its rays. So we have the sun. As soon as the sun rises, the fog or the mist just automatically melts away. So in this way, our karma automatically melts away when both the reactions of good karma and bad karma, because both also act like a chain to keep us tied to this material world. So what it will do, bhakti will destroy both the chains and we become freed finally. So that is understanding of karma here and the way out, how to escape this karma also. Okay, so we have completed this points here on karma. So probably you may have lots of questions because karma is usually a very popular topic. A lot of people become very interested on that. So we can open up to any questions if anyone has any questions on this.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Let's look at the chat. Okay, there's nothing in the chat.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
So it's clear, I suppose. No questions then?
Prabhu, can you hear me?
Okay. Anyway, if you think of one, or if you have anything you'd like to clarify further on karma, or if there's anything else, then you can always type the question out, send it to me by WhatsApp, or we can also discuss about it. Okay, so now it's 5 minutes to 10. Oh dear, again, I've overshot my time. I wanted to do some chanting. Maybe we will just chant a few names. So those of you who have the beats and all, if you'd like to join me to chant, I will just sit here and chant for a few names, and then we can, if you need to leave, I understand. But I will plan to try to have more time for chanting. So how we chant, if you remember, right, we have these beats. These are the beats here. So these are my beats. You put your middle finger and your thumb like this. You start from the big beats and you just chant as you go lah, right? So the speed of how we chant, I will follow a certain speed which is which is so that all can follow. But privately you can, this, like for example, on my own, this is how I would chant: Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Ram Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Ram Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So that is my usual speed of chanting. So today we will go a bit slower. Okay, so just a minute, I will pass to the next point. Okay, so let's say this prayer together. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Ram Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Ram Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, 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 Hare Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare. Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare. 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 Hare Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare. Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare. Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Ram Hare Hare. Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare. Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Hare Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Ram Hare Hare. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Haribol. So that was one round. So thank you for staying with me and chanting. So at the end of that one round, we can again repeat the word, the mantra, Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, like that. So each time we go to the next round, we can repeat this. And when we go to the second round, just now we went from the big bead to the small bead. If you can see, right, from the big bead to the small bead. When we go to the second round, we don't cross the Krishna bead, the giant bead over here, that the Krishna bead, we don't cross that. Instead, now we go from small bead all the way to the big bead. So that's how we continue. And then after that, again, back from big bead to small bead, and then small bead to big bead. So like that, usually we can chant the japa. Okay. So thank you very much for staying, and thank you for listening. So if you have any questions, Again, feel free to chat or to put it in the WhatsApp. So I'll see you all then tomorrow. I will post the quiz after this, so you can do it on your own time. And the video I'll also upload tomorrow. So thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Have a good night. Hare Bol.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu.